Would you like a fire extinguisher mount that can handle whatever abuse you can throw at it and still operate in case of an emergency? Why not the Rapto Worx fire extinguisher mount? And in this case, mounted using a JK seat bracket mount. I'm CPO, and we're going to show you a little bit more about this product from Rapto Worx. All right, so before we install, let's take a look at the actual components that comprise this kit of pure beef. First of all, you have the bracket for the seat. This is for the Jeep Wrangler JK, and I'll show you how that goes in. These are actually roll bar mounts, 2 of them to go around the actual fire extinguisher body, which it turns out is a perfect fit. Let me show you a little bit of detail on this guy. So this is the actual part that's going to mount to, in this case, the seat bracket. So a couple things to note here. A lot of thought and detail went into the design of this particular piece, and a lot of testing, right? So the guys at Rapto Worx didn't just think, hey, let me build a fire extinguisher bracket because those are trendy and cool and everybody wants one. The reality of it is they do a lot of work hanging out with guys that are running, hardcore stuff. So like Ultra 4 racing. And so that requires equipment that can handle a little bit more of a beating. They're built for that sort of Ultra 4, Baja, like hard and fast sort of racing environment. And that's their customer primarily. So a lot of what you're going to see is developed around that, and a need to find a better way to mount a fire extinguisher that is going to last through that kind of environment. And what they found is when they're out on the racetrack, they find broken hose clamp, fire extinguisher brackets, and all kinds of stuff laying all over the trail. By the way, their motto is hose clamps are made for hoses. So you'll never see hose clamp style bracketry from Rapto Worx. So some nice chamfered edges here. So basically you have a pin here that is fixed, and then you have a pull pin here that will release the fire extinguisher. Now this is the side that's actually going to mount to the fire extinguisher. One thing that was sort of interesting that I wanted to point out is here to here you see the lines where it shifts up. There's a little shelf right there, and then again over here. It's basically the material has been cut and thinned out in the center of this to allow for additional clearance for sand and crud to sort of work its way through the system. So how this is going to go, first of all, let me show you how these 2 pieces made up. All right, so the way these are going to mount up, this is going to be mounted to your seat bracket. This is going to be this is a passenger side mount that I'm going to be doing. So it's going to be towards the driver's side, and it's going to be like that. And then this is just going to slip in to that lower pin, and then you pull the other pin and lock it in place. And it's going to look just like that. So one thing I did notice is the assembly has a lot of play in it. I talked to the guys at Rapto Worx, and that is by design. And so the first thing I want to know is, hey, is this thing going to be rattling on me? And you might have the same question. So the answer I got is no, it doesn't rattle. And it's because once you hang the weight of the fire extinguisher off of there, everything sort of settles in, and as you can see, doesn't make noise. But I'm going to put that to the test once I get it installed. I'll drive around and I'll let you know if I hear a rattle. But they said, yeah, that's a common question and a common assumption. But the reality of it is, it does not rattle any more than like your high lift jack would rattle when you hit a bump. The handle assembly and all that, the jack mechanism. But just normal like day-to-day driving, the weight of the fire extinguisher holds that all together. But they didn't want to compromise the ability to get to this in all situations by making tighter tolerances. If you make it so tight it doesn't rattle, sure enough, it's going to not work on you when you want it. And failure proof was the goal. And please, for the love of all that is good and holy, do not use this fire extinguisher mount that comes with the fire extinguisher. This is designed to hang off of a wall, not mount to a vehicle, and it will not last. So get rid of that thing. And while I'm talking about fire extinguishers, you can get the fire extinguisher from Rapto Worx, but you don't have to. They sell one that is exactly the right size to fit their gear. So this is model B417 from Amerex. But important is to get the right type of fire extinguisher. This happens to be an ABC fire extinguisher that handles trash, wood, paper, liquids, and electrical equipment, which are the things we're most likely to come into contact with. But the other more important thing is it's all metal nozzle, even inside. So there's been a lot of problems. You might have seen some recalls with fire extinguishers with plastic nozzle and hoses that have been failing. So if you're going to spend the time to install a piece of safety equipment, I mean, make sure it's the right stuff. Like, don't cheap out on a fire extinguisher. It's going to be more expensive for a good high quality fire extinguisher. It's going to be more expensive for a good high quality bracket mounting system, but we're dealing with safety equipment, so you may as well not skimp on that. So I'm going to start out with mounting the fire extinguisher to this fire extinguisher bracket. To do that, you're going to use this pack that has 4 screws and washers. Now you're only going to use 2 of these. The reason it comes with 4 is because, like I mentioned before, this fire extinguisher mount was originally designed as a roll bar mount, so it came with 4 of these instead of just 2. You're just going to need 2 of these bolts and the washers, so you'll have some spares. So these are threaded. All right, so that's how we're looking so far. All right, I'm going to go ahead and loosen up these socket cap bolts on this. And that gives me enough room to slip this fire extinguisher in. There we go. Now you do have pins on this side. There's no reason to really pull those pins. It's actually going to be harder to get them in. It's better to use the bolt to clamp things down. And then basically what I'm going to do is sort of set it with the thought of putting the nozzle down and then of course towards the driver's side of the Jeep. And then I'm just going to lightly tighten these back down again. I still want it to be able to move. And then for final adjustment, I am going to use some blue thread lock. And then for the final part of the assembly, the mechanism to the bracket, it's going to happen with these 2 bolts and lock nuts that come with it and the washers. But I'll do that once I get the setup in the Jeep. For now though, I just kind of wanted to get this preset in place just to make it easier to deal with when I get inside there. All right, let's go to the Jeep. All right, so coming in here to the passenger side of the JK, what we're gonna do is install that seat bracket right there using those 2 seat posts. I have an impact, but if you don't, you might need a breaker bar. All right, so now that we have those bolts out, we can see how this assembly is gonna go into place. And let me get you a close up here. It makes perfect sense once you see it. But because of the way the seat is designed with this, I don't know, this ridge that runs around, this can't fit flat on top. So this piece is going to go under, but this side is flat, and so it's going to go on top. So basically what I'm going to do is just lift this seat up just a little bit and slip that right into place. Now, if you are like me and you have a floor mat or something that might be getting in the way, just sort of roll that up out of the way. Now that I know they're exactly where I want to be, I can take a look at what I have to do to achieve getting this bracket installed. So again, that's going to go there. This is going to end up going right here. So I can already see I need to pre-install this onto the seat bracket so that I can get to the nuts on the back side. I didn't want to do this on the bench because I wanted to make sure I knew exactly which orientation this bracket was going to go. All right, so now let me slip that back under there. All right, there we go. Now I will verify torque specs on these and come back later with a torque wrench and make sure that they're to the right spec. But this gets us enough for the install. Now we can set our fire extinguisher in and then look at how we're going to adjust it. It's going to be personal preference on where you put this. I'm thinking a 45-degree angle. "45-degree angle like this with the nozzle pointed this way. This would be the best way at keeping it out of people's way. And that's another question I have, is how does this interfere with passengers? And what I'm told is it doesn't really. We'll put that to the test. I'm going to hold that in place while I pull it out, and then I'm going to tighten it down in that configuration. Add some thread lock to it. All right, so there we go. Fire extinguisher's in place. So as a passenger, you would think it would get in the way a lot. Now my seat's all the way back. Yeah, normal foot position doesn't seem to matter. Now if you have little kids, you know, yeah, they're gonna put their foot all over everything. But normal adults, doesn't look like it's gonna be in the way. So the only downside to this sort of thing is it's definitely a two-handed operation, because you have to have one hand to pull the handle and the other hand to take the extinguisher out. But I really don't know if there's another way to do it. So it just is what it is. It's a two-handed operation. Would you like a fire extinguisher mount that can handle whatever abuse you can throw at it and still operate in case of an emergency? All right, so I just asked my son to go for a drive with me really quick. He doesn't know anything about the install, and he doesn't know why I'm asking him to go to the store with me. So I just want to get his initial reaction of having that fire extinguisher under his feet and just see what he says. So I'm pretty sure he'll notice it. It's kind of hard to not notice it, but I just want to get that real feel for what's it like. Does it bother the passenger? You know, that stuff.